Hello, and welcome to Dell Technologies presentation, Trying to Get Bi+. We're going to cover various topics relating to the Bi+ community. My name is Morgan Vergara, and I'm the test automation lead in Dell's development operations team. I'm a gender fluid person and identify as pansexual. I've been happily married for 17 years and I'm polyamorous with 2 other partners. Below, you can see some interesting facts about me. I've been a professional musician before. I collect interesting and amusing t-shirts, and I'm an avid gamer enjoying board games, video games, and tabletop role-playing games. As you can see, we're going to start out with understanding the Bi+ community, giving you a glimpse into who we are. We'll move on to covering bi-erasure and biphobia and how to avoid them. We'll also show some global data on mental health and show you some key figures in Bi+ history, and we'll have a wide variety of speakers from around the world. Finally, we'll show you some steps that you can take to be more inclusive in your spaces. These are some of the terms that Bi+ folks have to deal with, some of us on a daily basis. Confused is probably the most common and possibly the least objectionable. We can see others that are definitely more so, such as cheater, greedy, deviant, and freak. These terms show how misunderstood our community is, and this presentation aims to help people understand us more and see that we're not any of these things. With that, I'd like to introduce Paul Briscoe for the next part of our presentation.
Thanks, Morgan. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Briscoe. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as pan or pansexual, and I'm currently a corporate trainer here at Dell Technologies. A few interesting facts about me. I'm the dog dad to that lovely dog that you see in the picture. I have a huge blended family, and pre-COVID, we definitely loved getting together all the time. I think the Christmas 2019, we had 26 people. I have 3 biological siblings as well as 2 step siblings and all of their significant others. I absolutely love karaoke and cannot wait until I feel a little more comfortable to join the rest of the world and get back into that. I also serve on several boards here in Nashville, all that support the LGBTQIA community in some capacity. Today, I'll be discussing Bi+ identities, statistics around the Bi+ community, bi-erasure, as well as gatekeeping that we all run into. So last year at Out and Equal, someone presented and brought up the idea of identify versus you identify. And it really speaks to how identities cannot be outwardly given or externally given. It's the way that I identify. So sexual orientation is fluid, changeable, and specific to each person. No 2 people who identify as Bi+ will have the exact same attraction or even definition of what it means to be Bi+. In fact, no 2 people who identify as a sexual orientation in general may agree on who they are attracted to or how exactly to define that specific sexual orientation. The Bi+ sexual orientation, much like the gender non-binary or gender queer, falls in between the binary of sexual orientations and also being asexual. So anywhere within this pyramid, closer to any of these binaries or asexuality, anyone in the Bi+ community can fall into a place or a spot there, much like people who identify as non-binary or genderqueer can move anywhere within the realms of a queer identity or a non-queer identity or a non-gendered identity. Biromantic is the same as far as, so one is sexual orientation, one has to do with romantic feelings and relationships. Just like the sexual orientation, it could be heteroromantic, homoromantic, or aromantic. And biromantic people can move anywhere within that realm that they feel free and still identify under the Bi+ umbrella. It's difficult to determine, as far as the statistics go, it's difficult to determine the size and composition of the LGBTQIA+ population, especially using the survey-based approach that relies on the willingness of individuals to disclose their sexual orientation and gender identity. Some researchers have estimated that between 3.5% and 5% of the US population identifies somewhere in the L, G, B, and T of it all. So if we take a look at some of these statistics, we can see that the bisexual identity actually makes up the majority of people that identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual, or queer as far as their sexual orientation. I also want to point out that you will not see trans identities in these specific statistics, as these statistics really focus on sexual orientation and not so much gender identity or gender expression. So if you look here, bisexuals by and large have a lot less important people in their life that know that they're bisexual. So if you look at everyone, they're at 54% of important people in their life being aware that they're LGBT. Gay men having 77%, lesbians 71%, but bisexuals only accounting for 28% of them being comfortable or feeling valid within their bisexual identity to express that and make sure that everyone around them knows. This is a percent of LGBT people saying that there is either a lot, some, or little to no acceptance for their specific sexual orientation. And here you can see in bisexual men in particular, 46, almost half of them say there is little to no acceptance within the community, while lesbians, bisexual women, and even gay men enjoy a lot more support and acceptance in the outer world. So let's discuss bi-erasure and biphobia. Bi-erasure is a pervasive problem in which the existence or legitimacy of bisexuality is questioned or denied outright. I know that when I came out, originally came out as bisexual, this was 12 years ago or so. And, you know, one of the first things that a member of the LGBTQIA community told me, a gay man, was that, oh yeah, bi first, gay later, we get it. You're scared to, you know, tell everybody you're gay. And it was, you know, so invalidating of my experience and how I view the world and what I am attracted to in the world. And much like that, you'll see bi-erasure from both sides, both straight people and LGBTQIA members. You'll hear phrases like, oh, it's just a phase. They'll question you, you know, which do you like more? Are you like 80-20, 60-40, or like really 50-50? And that is probably one of the more annoying questions that I've actually had posed to me. So if you're dating a man or woman, does that mean that you aren't bisexual anymore? This is particularly harmful as well. A lot of people feel that they may be losing their identity when they do form a heteronormative or even a homosexual relationship. And it's not helpful to people in their own self-worth and how they identify sexually to pose questions and question erase their identities like that. So biphobia is a fear or bias and or prejudice of bisexuals, often based on stereotypes, including inaccurate associations with infidelity, promiscuity, and the transmission of sexually transmitted infections. So, you know, other questions that get brought up to people that are in relationships and still identify as bi plus or somewhere in the bi plus community, isn't your partner worried that you'll cheat? There's this idea that, you know, we'll just, you know, sleep around with anybody or be romantically involved with any old thing. We lack standards. We essentially will take anything that is given to us. And that's not the case. Just like anyone with any sexual orientation, we have our preferences. We have the people that we are attracted to. It just happens to be a wider array than is traditionally accepted. And let's briefly discuss internalized bi-erasure and biphobia. I know I myself went through this. The bi plus identifying people often do not speak up because they don't want to take up space for more marginalized communities, especially if they find themselves in a heteronormative relationship, it can be easy to just kind of erase your bi identity and move throughout the world in a perceptively heteronormative relationship. The same thing can be done in a homosexual relationship where you just kind of, I'm not bi anymore, or you just kind of sink into that identity. You're not correcting people when they tell you that you're gay or you're lesbian. Many bi plus people fall into explanatory exhaustion. So essentially getting burnout of coming out. I know I myself fell into this. I became very comfortable with people just referring to me as gay or homosexual, and simply because I didn't want the follow-up questions when I tell them that I'm bi or I'm pan. I'm like, yes, go ahead, I'm gay, and it's can do harm to how you see yourself in the world and how you feel and how seen you feel within both heteronormative and homosexual and any community in general. Because bi plus individuals are continually misidentified and marginalized, they often find themselves doubting their own sexuality, falling into depression, or closing themselves off from the world completely. The internal and external effects of bi-erasure and biphobia can lead to depression, self-hatred, and an increased risk of suicide. So finally, gatekeeping. Gatekeeping occurs for bi plus people in both the straight and LGBTQIA communities. Because of this, they end up with no role models and very little support. Their very identity is questioned and degraded. If someone is a member of the bi plus community and in another marginalized group or at that intersection of other marginalized groups, the gatekeeping can become even more of a problem. Bisexuals experience high rates of being ignored, discriminated against, demonized, or even rendered invisible by both the straight world and LGBTQIA communities. Often their entire sexual orientation is branded as invalid, immoral, or even irrelevant. I'm going to pass it over to Kayla to get into bi plus history around the world. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Each one of us is going to give a little bit about ourselves first. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Kayla Jochek. My pronouns are she and her. I identify as bi plus. Some little fun facts about me is I'm a born and bred Texan. So I say y'all. And I have an amazing partner of 18 years, Samuel, who has helped me grow to discover who I am. And we have a very big family. We've got 2 dogs, 3 cats, and a whole herd of backyard chickens. I am a total book nerd, sci-fi junkie, space geek, and I also do a lot of tabletop and computer console gaming. So today I'm going to start with discussing bisexuality throughout history. In ancient Greece, bisexuality was often encouraged between free men, with older men engaging in relationships with younger men. This was meant to give them wisdom and experience. This wouldn't stop them from marrying women later in life, though. Many Greek fables contained bisexual heroes. In Homer's Iliad, Achilles has a relationship with both women and his friend and sparring partner. While Alexander the Great and Roman Emperor Hadrian both openly had wives and male lovers. Zeus even had a male lover, Ganymede, when he wasn't romancing other women. In ancient Japan, bisexuality was common amongst the samurai warriors, with older warriors taking on young warriors as lovers, very similar to the Greeks. This special relationship was called shudo. There is even some evidence to suggest Native Americans supported bisexuality in the form of the Two-Spirit people. Two-Spirit people were members of the tribe who took on both male and female roles and were considered sacred. They would often have both heterosexual and homosexual relationships. These are not isolated incidences. This practice was common in many, many cultures. There's even evidence that King David and Jonathan were not platonic friends based on some research. This shows that the bi plus community has been around for a long time and is global. With that being said, in each modern culture, bisexuality comes with its own stigmas and as a result, different cultural results.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So with me being based out of North America, in Texas, in fact, right now, these are the insights from North America. So based on a study done in the US, results have shown that both male and female sexual minority adults had significantly elevated rates of substance use compared to heterosexual adults. Furthermore, relative to lesbian and gay women, bisexual women have significantly elevated odds of binge drinking, marijuana use, illicit drug use, opioid misuse, and alcohol use disorder. Relative to gay men, bisexual men have significantly elevated cigar use. We did not observe any substance use behaviors for which bisexual individuals had significantly lower risk than their lesbian or gay peers. These disparities may be explained in part by the unique risk factors for substance use experienced by bisexual individuals, particularly bisexual women. Also, in North America, the rates of sexual violence towards bisexual individuals is significantly increased. According to the Human Rights Campaign, sexual violence has been experienced by 35% of heterosexual women, 44% of lesbian women, but 61% of bisexual women. In the case of men, 21% of heterosexual men, 40% of gay men, and 47% of bisexual men have had sexual violence happen to them. Additionally, bi women are raped more than 2 times the rate of heterosexual women and more than 3 times the rate of lesbian women. In addition to these statistics, we want to show examples of prominent bi+ influencers from different regions of the world. For North America, we have Lou Reed. He is the lead singer and guitarist of Velvet Underground, and he was from New York. Some refer to the influential singer-songwriter as our first out rock star, but Reed never openly referred to himself as bisexual. However, the singer's popular track, Kill Your Sons, was about his parents forcing him into electroconvulsive therapy after he expressed his attraction to the same sex at a young age. There's plenty of stories about Reed's relationships throughout the 60s and 70s with people of a range of gender identities. True or not, Reed does remain an icon of the bisexual communities for younger generations. Now, I'm going to be handing it over to Nishad to discuss insights for the Asia-Pacific region.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, good afternoon, and namaste to everyone. My name is Nishad, Senior Analyst, Customer Experience Coach for North America, United Kingdom, and Ireland. It's been fantastic to be a part of Dell for the last 3 years, actively involved in Pride, Women in Action ERGs, and I'm doing my bit to be a change maker in diversity and inclusion. I am a dog hugger, a happy dancer, and the best thing about me, which my mother is very proud of, is I can do household chores better than the professionals. I'm based out of India, so let me take you to Asia. अगर हम गेज और लेस्बियन से कंपेयर करें, बाइसेक्सुअल व्यक्तियों में उच्च स्तर के चिंताओं के लक्षण दिखाए जाते हैं। स्ट्रक्चरल इक्वेशन मॉडलिंग से हमें ये पता चलता है कि गेज और लेस्बियन से ज्यादा बाइसेक्सुअल व्यक्तियों में ये देखा जा सकता है कि वे अपनी आइडेंटिटी के बारे में बहुत अनसर्टन होते हैं। वे अपनी लैंगिकता को छिपाते हैं और वे लोग LGBTQ+ समुदाय से संबंध बनाने में भी कमजोर भावनाओं के होते हैं। चिंता का विषय ये है कि बाइसेक्सुअल व्यक्तियों में प्रभावशाली खराब मानसिकता ज्यादा पाई जाती है, जबकि हाल के वर्षों में गेज और लेस्बियंस स्वास्थ्य पर अधिक ध्यान दिया गया है, लेकिन सामान्य चिकित्सक अभी भी ज्यादा बाइसेक्सुअल्स के स्वास्थ्य आवश्यकताओं से कम परिचित है, एंड दैट इज अ फैक्ट। ऑस्ट्रेलियाई लोगों के अब तक के सबसे बड़े अभियान, a study, the biggest study ever with the Australians, उनके अभियान के अंत में ये सामने आया है कि बाइसेक्सुअल्स में ज्यादा खराब मानसिकता दिखाई गई है और उनके पार्टनर्स के साथ आपसी संबंध भी बहुत ज्यादा तनावपूर्ण पाए जाते हैं। भीतर ही भीतर वे बाइफोबिक होते हैं। हेटेरोसेक्सुअल संबंध में और कम सहायक साथी होना भी एक चिंता का कारण बताया गया है और ये मनोवैज्ञानिक संकट है, इसकी भी भविष्यवाणी की गई है। Having said that, my take on is that we need to spread more awareness towards the health of bisexuals. We need to be more acceptable towards them. We need to have an approachable attitude so that we welcome them. Because it's not just about them being open, it's about their better mental well-being. And because we are in Asia, so let's talk about an Asian emperor. In the last years, BCE, Emperor A was enjoying a daytime nap. He was in his palace in Shanghai, which is now Xi'an in China, hundreds of miles inland, wearing a traditional long sleeve robe. Lying on one of his sleeves was a young man in his 20s. His name was Dong Jian. He was also asleep. So tender was the emperor's love for this young man that when he had to get up, instead of waking his lover, he cut off the sleeve of his robe. The story of this cut sleeve spread throughout the court, leading the emperor's courtiers to cut off their sleeves as tribute. Isn't that beautiful? The tale's influence outlived its time, producing the Chinese term, the passion of the cut sleeve, a euphemism of intimacy between two men. Emperor A was far from the only Chinese emperor to take a male companion openly. In fact, a majority of the emperors of the Western Han dynasty had both male companions and wives. The historian Brett Hinch asserts in Passion of the Cut Sleeve, the male homosexual tradition in China, that all 10 emperors who ruled over the 2 centuries of the Han dynasty were openly bisexuals. With A being the 10th, they each had a male favorite who is listed in the records of the grand historian, the Shiji, and the book of Han, the Hanshu. And now from Asia, let's move to Europe. And for that, we have Mark. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Nishad. Really appreciate the intro there. So hi, everyone. I'm Mark Redgrave. I identify as he, him, and bisexual. I work in the Amazon retail team, looking after all of their marketing. And I'm here today to talk about me a little bit and everything that goes on in Europe. So I live in London and been with my partner for 4 years now with our adorable little Japanese Akita, Kitsune, which actually means fox in Japanese. I'm a massive gamer, quintessential geek through and through, love playing video games, got every console under the sun, and love to travel. And if you haven't guessed yet, my favorite place is Japan. Been to Tokyo and all over Japan, and hoping I can get to go there again very soon. So what I really want to talk about today is some really interesting insights around the Bi+ community within Europe. So in 2015, there was actually a study done by the London School of Hygiene. And what they basically did was do a bunch of questionnaires and studies around the mental health of the people within the Bi+ community, and generated some really, really interesting insights. So the fact that bisexual men are more likely to suffer from depression than gay men, but less likely to suffer from anxiety than gay or heterosexual men. myself find really interesting. I have dealt with depression for a long time now. It's a daily struggle, and I think is something that often isn't talked about within the community. Having to pretend to be someone that you're not for a long time, and also struggling with sometimes the perceptions of bi+ identification within the community can also bring its own struggles that often relate to those that are diagnosed with depression later on in life. And what also came out of the back of this was that bisexual women were 64% more likely to face eating disorders than lesbians, and 37% more likely to practice self-harm, and 26% more likely to suffer from depression. Following treatment, bisexual women experienced significantly smaller reductions in anxiety than heterosexual women and were less likely to show reliable recovery. So really important stats and data here around the importance of mental health, how it differs for those who identify differently within the community, and hopefully reinforces just how much more we need to come together and really support one another, especially even in testing times now when a lot of us are still stuck at home with a lot of uncertainties when we'll be able to go outside and spend time with family and friends again. Lastly, when I was shown this, I was gobsmacked to say the least. I never ever thought this, especially being a massive Star Wars fan. But the fact that Sir Alec Guinness, the one and only Obi-Wan Kenobi, actually struggled a lot with his sexual identity and spent time with the quintessentially amazing Sir Ian McKellen, giving advice and saying that as an actor, you really should not be involving yourself in anything political, especially anything as dirty as homosexuality. The idea here is that when Sir Ian McKellen shared this at a Pride event, was that this was actually a form of self-hatred. He was struggling with his sexual identity, and that although this was happening at a time when anyone identifying other than heterosexual was being demonstrably discriminated in various communities, is something that's still prevalent today, and that we still need to work towards to ensuring that we support everyone, no matter how they identify, and being that rock to ensure they can be their authentic selves. So now I'm going to hand it over to Lissandra, who's going to be offering some insights around Latin America.
Thanks, Mark. Olá, meu nome é Lisandra, eu moro no sul do Brasil, me identifico como pansexual e estou na Dell desde 2019. Hoje eu ocupo uma posição de analista sênior de gerenciamento de programas para recém-formados de TI. Eu sou psicóloga, fiz um curso técnico em química durante o ensino médio, eu adoro cantar, faço parte de um grupo vocal que temos na Dell e também do coral da URGS. Sou muito ligada em jogos, tecnologias, também faço parte do comitê de ética da Dell e do pilar de pessoas dentro do Pride. A frase que eu gostaria de compartilhar é da Tammy Baldwin. Ela diz que não vai existir um dia mágico onde a gente vai acordar e simplesmente não vai haver problemas em nos expressarmos publicamente. A gente precisa construir esse dia, fazendo as coisas publicamente até que esse seja o jeito como as coisas são. Trazendo um pouco da nossa visão aqui da América Latina, as informações que a gente teve a respeito do tema são que as pessoas bissexuais são as que apresentam os piores índices de saúde mental, considerando ansiedade, depressão e também taxas de suicídio. Muitas vezes o suicídio fica associado com depressão, a gente imagina que a pessoa vai perdendo a vontade de viver e por isso cometem suicídio, quando a realidade é mais complexa do que isso. Poucas pessoas que tentam suicídio de fato querem deixar de viver. O que acontece é que na maioria das vezes a dor é tão grande, tão insuportável, que ao somar a falta de referências e estruturas que mantenham uma pessoa firme para seguir na vida, a morte é o único caminho que se torna possível de seguir. E é nessa perspectiva que a gente olha para a importância da vida das pessoas bissexuais, o que significa, o que elas enfrentam, né? O que significa que enfrentam os piores índices de saúde mental. É preciso entender o nível de violência e vulnerabilidade que enfrentamos, né? A gente sofre violência física, abuso de todos os tipos, abandono de relações, de relacionamentos, e a própria comunidade LGBT às vezes não está lá quando a gente precisa. E aí fica a pergunta, quais são as referências bissexuais que nós temos, né? Nós somos estigmatizados, às vezes tratados como infiéis, promíscuos, traiçoeiros, confusos, vetores de STs, homossexuais enrustidos ou heterossexuais querendo chamar a atenção. São essas as referências que a gente tem para nos apoiar quando a gente está numa situação difícil? Uma pesquisa do Journal of Public Health sugere que as mulheres bissexuais sofrem mais problemas de saúde mental do que as lésbicas. A pesquisa fala que, em relação a mulheres lésbicas, as bissexuais têm 64% mais chance de enfrentar distúrbio alimentar, 37% maior a probabilidade de sofrer com automutilação e estão 26% mais propensas a sofrer com quadros de depressão. O autor dessa pesquisa também concluiu que essas mulheres, além de terem menos relacionamentos estáveis, são menos propensas a comunicar a orientação sexual delas a amigos, familiares, colegas de trabalho e até mesmo seus atuais companheiros e companheiras de relacionamento, pois tudo isso pode gerar preconceito e desconforto. E para fechar a parte de Latinoamérica, vamos falar um pouquinho da Marielle. Né? Para quem não conhece, a Marielle nasceu em uma das favelas do Complexo da Maré, no Rio de Janeiro, começou a trabalhar desde cedo, aos 11 anos, ajudando seus pais num camelô, e aos 18 foi trabalhar em uma creche. Ela deu luz à sua única filha, chamada Luiara, em 98, quando ela tinha 19 anos, e era casada com seu primeiro marido, chamado Caco. No mesmo ano, foi aluna da primeira turma de cursos populares oferecidos aos jovens do Complexo da Maré. Ela se formou em Ciências Sociais pela PUC, sendo bolsista do ProUni. E durante a vida inteira, a Marielle lutou pelas causas LGBT. Ela era uma mulher abertamente bissexual, e em 2004 foi que ela começou o relacionamento com a Mônica Benício, e o casamento dela estava marcado para o final do ano de 2018. Ela começou a vida política em 2006 e foi eleita vereadora do Rio pelo PSOL em 2016, logo após ter finalizado seu mestrado em administração pública. Na Câmara Municipal, a Marielle trabalhou ativamente nas denúncias das violações dos direitos humanos, foi linha de frente nas críticas em relação às intervenções federais nas favelas do Rio de Janeiro, tendo presidido também a Comissão de Defesa da Mulher. Ela trabalhou na coleta de dados sobre violência contra as mulheres, lutou pela garantia ao aborto e incentivou a entrada de mulheres na política. Infelizmente, ela só pôde exercer um ano de mandato, porque em 2018 ela foi assassinada. Ela certamente foi e é um grande ícone para a comunidade bi+, e a frase que ela deixa para a gente é a seguinte: não sou livre enquanto outra mulher for prisioneira, mesmo que as correntes dela sejam diferentes das minhas. And now I will hand it over to Morgan.
Thank you, Lysandra. So for the last part of our presentation, we'd like to show you how you can be more inclusive in your areas. These suggestions apply both to your professional environment as well as your personal lives. First of all, believe that bi+ people exist. As we saw earlier, bi-erasure is definitely a thing we deal with. Remember, we are here, we exist, and we're not going away. Second, accept bi+ identities. Don't try to define their orientation by their past, nor by who you think they are. If someone you know comes out to you as bisexual, pansexual, or any of the other terms we saw earlier, accept them for who they are. Third, speak out. Your bi+ friends and family need your support, and that includes speaking out against bi-erasure and biphobia. If you hear someone saying, oh, they're just gay and haven't realized it, or it's just a phase, speak up and tell them that they shouldn't speak for the other person, but rather believe and accept them for who they are. Fourth, celebrate bi+ culture on Bi+ Visibility Day. This comes on September 23rd each year. Acknowledge those that you know are bi+, both in your personal lives and people in public life, such as celebrities. Finally, ask how you can be the best possible ally and listen to their responses. Thank you for joining us today, and we all hope that you have learned something new or gotten some new insights on the bi+ people you know, both personally and professionally.